Nestled away in the mountains and trees of Oregon's Cascade Forest is a small structure. It stands alone and vacant except for the few visitors it receives each year. The inside is furnished with some benches and a table. A wooden ladder leads visitors to the upper story, where the building earns its name, Pechuck Lookout. Pechuck Lookout sits on a mountaintop, overlooking the canyons and valleys of the western Cascade Mountain Range. It is located in Clackamas County near Table Rock Wilderness and the Molalla River. Its unique framework was formed by native stones, giving it the strength to outlast other lookouts made from wood materials.
Pechuck's basically been using this site. It's about 4,400 foot in elevation, and the site's been used as a lookout since roughly 1918 or 1919. The current structure that we're looking at right now, the cupola style lookout, has been here since 1932. The stone came from the surrounding area. They packed in a lot of the stone from I think a lot of it from down below the hill.
Pechuck, they used the rock out of the surrounding area because they had so much rock that they decided to build a base out of the rock instead of buy a lookout kit or bring wood up. Just use what's on the site.
As far as lookouts go, Pechuck is unique. It is one of only a handful of stone lookouts known to exist in the United States, and the last stone lookout with this design known to exist in Oregon.
Pechuck's the only stone cupola left in Oregon. What a cupola is a 12 by 12 kit that they would buy, and the bottom part was your living quarters, and the little cupola on top is where you would actually go up and plot your fires.
The craft of constructing fire lookouts was still in its infancy back in the 1930s when Pechuck Lookout was built. The plan was to construct something simple, yet strong.
At the time, you got to realize they were doing lots of logging back then, heavy logging. And so the timber companies wanted protection because of what happened back in Minnesota and 1910 up in Montana, the big fires, because of the slash. And that's the main reason that lookout was there, was for protection of the timber holdings down below.
The devastating fires in the summer of 1910 affected much of the western United States. Many small towns were destroyed and 87 people died, including 78 firefighters. At that time, there was no fire lookout system in place. And in the heavily forested areas of the Molalla River watershed, concern was growing about the possibility of a firestorm. In 1918, because of its strategic view over some of the biggest trees in Oregon, Pechuck Mountain was selected as one of the first fire lookout sites in the area. Even though it was only a rangefinder, similar to the one pictured here, the location worked well. And in 1932, plans were made to build a permanent structure. Not much is known about the history of Pechuck Lookout. We do know that it was built in 1932 by a small crew of stonemasons and carpenters, one of whom was John Oblak, an immigrant from Slovenia.
My grandfather's name was John Oblak, Sr., and he came over from Ellis Island and landed in New York from Slovenia. Actually, it was Yugoslavia back in the time that he came across the ocean, and settled in Rock Springs, Wyoming, and that's where my father, Albin, or his name is Beanie Oblak, was born in Rock Springs in 1913. They traveled over to Oregon and settled here in the Molalla area. And he built a home up near what they call the North Fork area of Molalla. So that's the connection that I have with that Mount Pechuck area, is my grandfather built it.
I remember him sitting on the back porch, puffing on a cigar. What a wonderful day. And enjoyed his life. He had a garden. He dug his own well. They had a woodshed and they had a big barn, but my grandfather was very patient. He was very, very thin in posture. He always drank a cup of coffee and smoked his cigars.
In October 2011, members of the O'Black family paid a visit to the lookout. Not only were they curious about the structure, they saw it as a connection to the memory of their ancestor.
And it was emotional going up there. And I just marvel how my grandfather went up 4,500 feet to help build this and taking all these tools, because it was hard for us to get up there with the brush and everything. And I think my grandfather must have been in his, I think we figured out, in his 40s or 50s when he went up there to build it. And it was, well, the way we went, it was pretty steep. Coming back, we went kind of a different route, but it was a distance to walk.
In 1964, after more than 30 years of service, Pechuck Lookout became obsolete. Fire detection from the air and other new technologies were replacing lookouts in Oregon and in other parts of the country. The following years were hard on the abandoned lookout. The roof began to leak, windows were broken out, and the brick chimney collapsed. In 1990, restoration began. Volunteers worked to restore the lower roof. In 1992, the Bureau of Land Management acquired Pechuck Mountain through a land exchange. It then took several years for BLM employees and BLM volunteers to make repairs and restore Pechuck to almost the same condition as in the days of John O'Black.
Right now, other than the ridge cap, it looks original, yeah. The ridge caps, you know, where the roofing meets on the corners, has been changed over the years. The originals are laying on the ground burnt. But other than that, the stones, when it was restored, the stones were put back in the exact same where they came out of on the one, because one of the walls, the mortar was coming out. So volunteers actually took the rocks out and put them right back in the same exact spot, same point and everything, so it would stay original.
In an aging schoolhouse that once served the Molalla North Fork School District is a tool chest that once belonged to John O'Black. His family has carefully preserved the toolbox and the tools inside for over 80 years.
This case here was John O'Black's tool chest, which we believe probably helped build Mount Pechuck. So hence the connection to Mount Pechuck. So what we'll do is open this up and you'll get a chance to see the tools of the trade back in the early 1900s. My father inherited, the tools from his father, John O'Black.
Many of those tools were used for cement and stonework and for carpentry. Some were handmade from raw materials. Some had been repaired several times. These survivors of the machine age now seem out of place in today's age of technology.
And of course, they didn't have electricity.
But in 1932, they were the only tools available for building a structure like Pechuck Lookout. Now, 80 years later, the lookout is still standing and has many stories to tell, thanks in part to the Bureau of Land Management and a group of volunteers who provide repairs and yearly maintenance.
Pechuck is secure. The stonework has been redone. It's a wonderful hike to get to it. One of the very best hikes, if you really feel like stretching your legs, is to climb up over the Table Rock Wilderness and come right across on that trail, again maintained by volunteers. And of course the Friends of Pechuck keep it in pretty good shape.
We come up here on a fairly regular basis just to check on it. We manage it out of the Salem District, the Bureau of Land Management out of the Salem District. This is the north zone of the Cascades, actually, resource area. And we have a volunteer group, Pechuck Lookouters, basically, that come in and they do a lot of work here on the lookout and kind of keep an eye on it and those sorts of things.
My knowledge of Pechuck Lookout goes back to the early 90s when a friend of mine and I rode our horses up here. One of the corners was totally caved in. There were supplies up here that looked like somebody was going to start working on it. And Pete Shea with the BLM and volunteers rebuilt the lookout. And I became involved with it a few years after that when Pete was thinking about he was going to be retiring, and he wanted to see if there would be a group that he could kind of turn it over to. So there were some of us that were fairly local to the area, and we thought, well, why don't we take on this responsibility, because we have a real concern, a real love for the area.
Well, I'd been up there, and the people had painted on it, Pechuck Saloon and all kinds of stuff, and it had really been vandalized and neglected. So Pete Shea, he retired. He was a BLM in Salem District, and he got a hold of me one day and he said, we're going to restore Pechuck. It's been abandoned for years, and would you like to be involved with it? So I told him, well, sure I would be.
Without annual maintenance, Pechuck Lookout would quickly fall into disrepair. The Pechuck Lookouts are always seeking additional volunteers.
If you know how to handle a wire brush and a paint scraper, the exterior, the rafter ends, and pretty much all the exterior trim that's not stone needs to be painted every year, especially on the south and west exposures where it just gets beat on by the weather. Today we came up and found we've got a broken window, and that involves a probably 4-hour round trip to town to get the glass and come back another time, and of course you got to take the measurements with you and have all that sort of squared away and planned out ahead. So there are always things that we need help with, and a lot of it's labor intensive, and a lot of it is just logistics. You got to have a tape measure with you to measure the glass so that when you go to town you can get the glass, and then when you come back up you have to make sure you have the glazier's points and the putty and somebody that knows how to do a glass replacement on one of these old school windows with you to get the job done. So.
And that's Simon. But if you know how to do a wire brush and a paint scraper, we have a job for you.
To get to the lookout, volunteers and BLM personnel are able to drive a series of logging roads that cross through timber company land. This route is used for logging and closed to the general public by a locked gate that sits on private property. Most visitors approach Pechuck Lookout on foot or by horseback over a trail system that runs through Table Rock Wilderness and BLM land. The main trail starts at Rooster Rock Trailhead at the end of Rooster Rock Road. From there, the trail goes northeast, enters Table Rock Wilderness, and zigzags up a steep ridge until it meets High Ridge Trail. At this intersection, the route to the lookout turns right and heads southeast, where it leaves the wilderness area and runs into the Pechuck Mountain Access Road. An old trailhead sign still remains where visitors used to register for access to Table Rock Wilderness. The trail to the lookout then crosses the road and climbs the last half mile to the lookout site. The entire trip is about 3.5 miles.
We ask people that they have maps and they can find their way up here for the most part on their own. If they're coming in from the wilderness side, we like to keep that as much of a wilderness experience as possible. And so we don't want to have signs at every 200 yards or anything like that. We like to keep the wilderness trails more of a backcountry experience and more a little orienteering and knowing where they're going with their maps, and more of a what's around the next corner sort of mentality.
For those travelers who want even more of a wilderness experience, Table Rock Wilderness offers a 16-mile trail system, suitable for hiking and horse travel. These trails offer access to high ridges and viewpoints. Within sight of the lookout is Rooster Rock, where high meadows allow views of the Willamette Valley and the Cascade Range. Pechuck Lookout is also visible from this viewpoint. The basalt spires at Rooster Rock top out at about 4,600 feet. Many day hikers include Rooster Rock as a side trip on their way to Pechuck Mountain. North of Rooster Rock is Table Rock. At an elevation of almost 4,900 feet, Table Rock is the highest point in the Table Rock Wilderness and has remarkable views of the Cascade Range. On a clear day, visitors can see many of the high Cascade peaks: Mount Hood, Mount Jefferson, the Three Sisters, and of course, Pechuck Mountain. Table Rock Wilderness is one of the last lower valley Cascade forests protected from industrial logging in the Molalla River watershed. The wilderness contains about 6,000 acres of steep, rugged terrain, towering volcanic cliffs, pristine forests, and a wide variety of plants and wildlife.
It's beautiful back there. It's a very nice country. The BLM is responsible for managing it. We do either internally, we do our own maintenance on the trails, or on occasion we'll bring in youth corps crews that'll help us out to open the trail up in the spring and maintain the trail through the course of the open season. There's a lot of up and down, so you have to be in relatively good shape to travel those trails comfortably.
When the sun sets on Pechuck Lookout and the moon rises over the hills, most visitors head for home. Spending the night at the lookout can be difficult. Hauling equipment and supplies over the rough terrain takes planning and endurance. Aside from that challenge, accommodations at the lookout may be unappealing to many people.
Frankly, it's primitive. This is a primitive place. It's difficult to get to. It's difficult to be here. As far as the weather is concerned, there's no water. You can't plug in a hairdryer. I know that sounds kind of smart, but I mean, people need to understand what they're getting into when they come up here. It's not a soft and gentle place, but it's rough. It's meant to be a shelter. It's a historic site, and if you want to come and stay, if I were coming up here and it was doing anything less than snowing hard or raining really hard, I'd sleep outside. It's a beautiful place, but it's an old building with its dampnesses and bugs and funny smells and all the rest of it.
Pechuck Lookout certainly gives new meaning to the word rustic. There is no heat, no lights, and the nearest water supply is a spring about 200 yards down a steep hillside. The water must be treated or filtered in order to drink it. Families of wood rats also call the lookout home and have defied all attempts to evict them. About 80 yards away is the Pechuck Outhouse, and like the spring, it's located down a steep hillside. This composting toilet doesn't give much privacy and must be stirred occasionally in order to compost. Years ago, it was located even further away, alongside the access road. There's good news for overnight visitors. No fee is charged.
No, there's no fee charged to come up here. And it is, for the most part, open year-round. First come, first serve. And we do see people up in the wintertime and through the course of the summer.
August 25th, 2011. Longtime Table Rock Wilderness adventurer, first time to Pechuck Lookout. This place is awesome. I want to move
Hiked
there.
up from Rooster Rock Trailhead. Gorgeous sunny weather. Tons of butterflies. Hubby's looking forward to coming back.
Made the trek to Rooster Rock and Pechuck Lookout on the occasion of my 52nd birthday. Beautiful day. Thanks to all who keep this place maintained.
Beautiful summer day. We hiked in from Rooster Rock Trailhead and even got a bit of hiking from our 2-year-old. Spectacular place. A big thanks to everyone who helps keep it going.
88 degrees yesterday, 60 degrees and rain today. Blowing sideways. Always a good hike.
Visitors can become part of the Lookout's history by adding their names to the Pechuck Lookout logbook, which can be found in a green metal ammunition case. Volunteers and BLM staff read the logbooks and save them to keep track of how much use the Lookout is receiving each year. They often leave messages alerting visitors of any problems in and around the Lookout. The staff makes only a few requests of visitors.
Just to leave it as they found it, or in better shape than they found it. If they're going to open any, doors, shutters, windows, those sorts of things, we ask that they close everything up and button it up again.
And if we do get somebody up here who doesn't, the way the windows operate is a little unique, and we have a set of shutters that I'm sitting on right now that we put up every fall to protect the windows and try to keep the moisture out. And we've had problems with people coming up in the winter that take those down and then don't put them back up when they leave. And that lets the weather in, which is a huge problem.
I mean, it's just well-meaning people that are probably the biggest problem. Is that you've just got to, you know, come and visit, don't stay, and, you know, leave the shutters alone.
The Forest Fire Lookout Association has been involved with the preservation and history of lookouts worldwide. These people love lookouts. Membership is composed of these enthusiasts, hikers, forest fire personnel, writers, and members of the environmental community.
I'm going to kind of cover what's left, which isn't much. There were a total of 50 lookouts in 1949, and now there's 4.
In 1990, the FFLA worked with other organizations to get Pechuck Lookout on the National Historic Lookout Register. Because of its unique stone construction and historic value, Pechuck became the second lookout listed on the register. The first was Sand Mountain Lookout in the Willamette National Forest.
When the public sees that lookouts have been vandalized, they tear them up even more. When the lookout bears the historic lookout registration sign, we found, particularly in a study that was done in Arizona and New Mexico, that the vandalism drops dramatically because they realize somebody still cares for this structure. One of our major roles is to maintain as many of these, and we do them with all kinds of creative partnerships with the U.S. Forest Service primarily, but also with many state agencies and the National Park Service and the Bureau of Indian Affairs, as well as BLM.
This is not my structure. It's not the U.S. Forest Service. It's not Oregon Department. It's your structure too. So if we go out there and we restore it and say, look, you know, this is yours. This is part of your heritage, your life. You know, you're actually paying for a lot of it, you know, out of your taxes. And the vandalism in Oregon, our vandalism really went down. When people come up and say, well, this isn't an abandoned lookout anymore. There's windows in it now. Somebody cares. And then the next person. And it's really helped here in Oregon a lot.
The FFLA has found that it defeats the purpose of restoration if the public does not use the lookouts. The more visitors a lookout receives, the better its chances for long-term survival.
It's just a huge challenge if it isn't used for something. As soon as it's not used, whether it be vandalism, weather, the elements, the best thing is use it for something.
So how much longer can this little lookout occupy the top of Pechuck Mountain? The original creators gave it the gift of longevity by using native stone. But that was not enough to keep it from falling into disrepair. Then it was given the gifts of restoration and protection by men and women who saw it as an important part of our heritage. Now, as that tradition presses on through time, Pechuck Lookout reaches out to offer us a gift in return. We receive it every time we climb that last stretch to the summit and are greeted by its presence. And we realize there's a smile on our face.